Captain Sarah Chen stood at the helm of the ESS Horizon, Earth's newest diplomatic vessel, as the massive Varian mothership emerged from fold space. The alien ship's obsidian surface seemed to absorb the distant starlight, its angular form bristling with what her tactical officer quietly confirmed were weapon arrays. First contact was supposed to be humanity's greatest moment. Instead, it became their greatest humiliation. The Varian ambassador, Threshold Commander Nexthor, towered over the human delegation in the conference room. His silvery skin seemed to ripple in the dimmed lights, a requirement they demanded for the meeting. "Your world reeks of organic decay," he declared, mandibles clicking in what the diplomatic AI translated as disgust. "A primitive dirt world that somehow spawned a spacefaring race. How unfortunate." Sarah bit back her response, maintaining diplomatic protocol despite the insult. She noticed how the Varian delegation kept adjusting their protective gear, seemingly uncomfortable with even the reduced lighting. Chief Science Officer Maya Rodriguez caught her eye, making a subtle gesture toward her datavat. "We appreciate your candid assessment," Sarah replied carefully. "Perhaps we could discuss trade opportunities. Earth has many unique resources." Resources? Nexthor interrupted with a sound like breaking glass, apparently Varian laughter. "Your world's only value is its strategic position. The Varian Empire requires a new forward operating base in this sector. You have 2 standard cycles to evacuate your major population centers and prepare for occupation. Resistance would be unwise." The demands continued, each more outrageous than the last. As the human delegation returned to the horizon, Sarah found Maya waiting in her ready room with Lieutenant James Chen, her tactical officer and brother. "Their biology is fascinating," Maya began without preamble, projecting sensor data. "The Varians evolved on a tidally locked world, never experiencing true daylight. Their entire civilization exists in perpetual twilight. Even our dimmed conference room was uncomfortable for them." James leaned forward, his expression intense. "Their ships, too, did you notice? No radiation shielding. They use gravity manipulation for propulsion and weapons, but their hulls would offer zero protection against focused solar radiation. A weakness," Sarah mused, staring at the sensor data. "But they've conquered dozens of species, hundreds of worlds. Why hasn't anyone exploited this?" "Because they strike fast, establish orbital superiority, and force submission before anyone can organize a defense," James replied. "But we have something they don't expect." Maya nodded eagerly. "Project Helios. The experimental solar collection and focusing arrays we've been developing for clean energy production. With modifications, we could turn them into weapons," Sarah finished, her mind racing. "But we'll need time. And we'll need them to think we're complying out of fear." The next 2 cycles were a masterpiece of deception. As Earth's governments publicly wrung their hands and made a show of preparing for evacuation, Project Helios was transformed into humanity's best hope for survival. Every solar farm and orbital power station was secretly modified. Civilian ships were retrofitted with experimental light-focusing arrays disguised as standard sensor packages. When Nexthor returned to accept Earth's surrender, he found a seemingly defeated planet. The Varian battle fleet emerged from fold space in perfect formation, their weapons charged. Sarah watched from the horizon, now positioned with the rest of Earth's refugee fleet at the system's edge. Such wisdom in submission. Nexthor's transmission dripped with condescension. "Your dirt world will serve a greater purpose under Varian rule." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "You're right about one thing, Commander. Today will serve a greater purpose." She opened a channel to all Earth forces. "Operation Daybreak is go. Light them up." Thousands of solar arrays pivoted in perfect synchronization. Modified power satellites emerged from hiding behind Earth's moon. The horizon's own hidden weapons deployed, joining the concert of artificial daylight about to break upon the Varian fleet. The first rays struck Nexthor's flagship, and for the first time, Humans heard a Varian scream. The success of Operation Daybreak's first strike sent shockwaves through both human and Varian forces. Sarah Chen watched from the Horizon's bridge as the enemy fleet scattered, their formations breaking apart as ships desperately tried to escape the concentrated beams of artificial sunlight. But amidst the chaos, she noticed something troubling. The larger Varian vessels were already adapting, their hulls developing a strange prismatic sheen. "They're deploying some kind of reactive armor," James reported from Tactical, his fingers flying over the controls. "Our effectiveness is dropping." "Maya, what are we looking at?" Maya's voice crackled over the comm from the science lab. "Their hull material is restructuring at the molecular level. They're learning, adapting. We need more power, different frequencies. The basic arrays won't be enough for long." Sarah nodded grimly. "Begin Phase 2. Deploy the Helios platforms." Hidden beneath the surface of Earth's moon, massive doors ground open. 12 enormous satellites emerge, each one a triumph of human engineering. The Helios platforms were originally designed to beam solar power to Earth's dark side. Now, their mile-wide arrays of precision-crafted mirrors and focusing lenses served a deadlier purpose. But the Varians weren't the galaxy's dominant empire by chance. Even as the first Helios platform locked onto its target, the alien fleet was reorganizing. Smaller ships formed protective screens around their capital vessels, sacrificing themselves to buy time. Energy readings from the surviving ships spiked ominously. "Multiple fold space signatures," James shouted. "They're calling in reinforcements." New Varian ships thundered into reality around them, these ones clearly built for war. Their hulls were already equipped with the prismatic armor, and their weapons were charging with an ominous purple glow. On the main screen, Nexthor's scarred face appeared, his silver skin now mottled with radiation burns. "You dare!" he snarled, mandibles clicking furiously. "You think your primitive light tricks can stand against the full might of the Empire? We will reduce your world to ash." Sarah cut the transmission with a gesture. "Maya, please tell me Project Eclipse is ready." "Just finished the final calibrations," Maya replied, excitement evident in her voice despite the situation. "But Sarah, we've never tested it at full power." The simulations suggest. "We're out of time for simulations," Sarah interrupted. "Engineer Rodriguez, you have authorization to proceed. All ships, execute Pattern Omega. Let's show them what this Dirtworld can really do." The human fleet split apart in a precisely choreographed dance, creating gaps in their formation. Through these gaps, the Helios platforms began to move, their massive arrays shifting and combining. As the Varian fleet pressed their attack, the platforms locked together like pieces of a cosmic puzzle. "Eclipse array forming," Maya reported. "Quantum synchronization at 67% and climbing. The lunar power grid is responding, but we're drawing more energy than it was ever designed to handle." The Varian ships launched their first salvo, purple energy beams slicing through space. Several human vessels took direct hits, their shields flaring and failing, but they maintained formation, protecting the combining Helios platforms at all costs. "Synchronization at 94%, Maya called out. "Sarah, the power grid is starting to destabilize. We need to fire now." "Not yet," Sarah insisted, watching the tactical display. The Varian fleet was still too dispersed. They needed to draw them in closer, make the shot count. "All ships, fall back to Point Delta. Make them think we're running." The human fleet executed a fighting retreat, appearing to struggle against the Varian onslaught. The alien ships pressed their advantage, clustering together for a final push. Nexthor's massive flagship led the charge, its weapons preparing to deliver a killing blow. "Now," Sarah commanded, "initiate Project Eclipse." The combined Helios platforms hummed with power. The lunar grid went into overdrive, channeling the stored energy of 1,000 solar farms. At the array's focal point, space itself seemed to bend as concentrated solar energy gathered in a blinding sphere. "My God," James whispered, shielding his eyes despite the bridge's automatic filters. "It's like a second sun." The artificial star erupted, sending forth a beam of pure sunlight more intense than anything Earth scientists had thought possible. It struck the Varian fleet dead center, overwhelming their newly developed defenses in an instant. Ships literally melted, their adaptive armor unable to cope with the sheer intensity. Next, Thor's flagship vanished in a flash of light so bright it was briefly visible from Earth's surface. When the light faded, half the Varian fleet was gone. The surviving ships were already jumping to fold space, retreating in disarray. But Sarah felt no triumph as she surveyed the battlefield. This was only the beginning. "Status report," she ordered, her voice tight. "The eclipse array is fried," Maya reported. "Power grid is at 12% and failing. We won't be able to fire it again without months of repairs." "But it worked," James added. "We bloodied their nose, showed them we're not just some helpless Dirtworld." Sarah stared at the tactical display, watching the last Varian ships disappear. "Send word to Earth Command. Tell them Phase 2 was successful, but we need to accelerate the timetable for Phase 3. She turned to her crew, her expression resolute. "Because they'll be back. And next time, they'll bring everything they have." 3 months after the Battle of Earth, Sarah Chen stood in the war room beneath Geneva, studying holographic displays of Varian space. Dozens of red markers indicated enemy fleet movements, all converging on a massive staging area near the Empire's core worlds. But it was the single blinking green dot that held her attention, a scout ship that had just returned from deep behind enemy lines. "The intelligence is solid," Maya Rodriguez announced, striding into the room with a data crystal. "The Varian leadership is gathering their entire war fleet at Nexus Station. Over 2,000 ships, including designs we've never seen before." She inserted the crystal, and new images appeared. Massive vessels with strange, crystalline structures growing from their hulls. "Light diffusing technology," James Chen added, gesturing to the structures. "They're adapting faster than we anticipated. The basic solar weapons won't be effective anymore." Sarah nodded grimly. "Then it's time for Operation Sunrise. Show me what you've got." Maya's fingers danced over the controls, bringing up schematics of a new weapon system. "We call it the Prism Drive. Instead of trying to overwhelm their defenses with raw power like the Eclipse Array, this manipulates light at the quantum level. No matter how they try to diffuse or reflect it, the energy will find its way through." "The downside," James continued, "is that each ship can only carry one shot. The crystalline matrix burns out after a single use. We've managed to produce enough for a single strike force." Sarah studied the schematics carefully. "How many ships?" 50, Maya replied. "That's all we could convert in time. We'll be heavily outnumbered." Numbers didn't help the Spanish Armada, Sarah mused, or Pearl Harbor, or a dozen other battles throughout history where technology and tactics trumped brute force. She straightened. "Decision made. Begin preparations. I want the strike force ready in 48 hours." The next 2 days were a blur of activity. 50 of Earth's best ships were fitted with prism drives, their crews drilling constantly to master the new technology. Sarah had selected the Horizon as her flagship, despite recommendations that she coordinate from Earth. She wouldn't ask her people to take risks she wouldn't share. As the strike force prepared to depart, a transmission came in from the newly formed Earth Defense Council. Sarah was surprised to see her old mentor, Admiral Zhang, on the screen. "The Council has approved your plan," he said without preamble, "but they've added a condition. We've received a transmission from a group calling themselves the Twilight Resistance. Apparently, not all Varians support their empire's expansion. They've offered to help coordinate our attack with internal sabotage." Sarah frowned. "Can they be trusted?" "That's what makes this interesting," Zhang replied. "Their leader is arriving at Luna Base now. They want to join your strike force." Hours later, Sarah found herself face to face with Kexley, a Varian resistance leader who looked nothing like her warrior kin. Her silver skin was paler, almost translucent, and she moved with a grace that belied her species' typically rigid demeanor. "My people were not always conquerors," Kexley explained, her voice surprisingly melodious through the translator. "Before the military caste seized power, we were explorers, scientists. Some of us still remember those days. And you're willing to help us strike at your own people?" James asked skeptically. Kexley's mandibles clicked softly. "The Empire is not my people. They are a perversion of everything we once stood for. Your Project Sunrise. It reminds me of theories our ancient scientists once proposed, before such research was banned. Perhaps it is fitting that Earth, the world they mocked as primitive, will help us reclaim our heritage." The strike force departed at dawn, 50 ships carrying humanity's hopes and an unlikely alliance. Using data provided by the Resistance, they plotted a course through supposedly impenetrable Varian defense networks. Kexley's codes proved genuine, allowing them to slip past automated sentries and patrol fleets. As they approached Nexus Station, Sarah received word that the Resistance had begun their part of the operation. Power fluctuations rippled through the massive structure as saboteurs struck key systems. The gathered Varian war fleet began to drift out of formation as contradictory orders spread confusion through their ranks. "This is it," Sarah announced to the strike force. "Prism drives charged and ready. Remember your training. 1 shot, 1 kill. Make it count." The human fleet emerged from stealth mode directly above the station. For a crucial moment, the Varian ships hung motionless, their commanders unable to believe such audacity. That moment was all Earth's forces needed. "Execute Operation Sunrise," Sarah commanded. "Fire." 50 prism drives activated simultaneously. The space around Nexus Station erupted in a display that defied description. Light bent and twisted, finding impossible paths through the Varians' defensive screens. Ships that had been modified to withstand the intensity of a star found themselves pierced by beams that seemed to ignore physical laws. The crystalline structures on the human ships shattered as predicted, but they had served their purpose. In the chaos that followed, Sarah watched as centuries of Varian military supremacy began to crumble. The Resistance vessels emerged from hiding, adding their fire to the confusion. The mighty war fleet, pride of the Empire, was being undone by the very world they had dismissed as insignificant. But as Sarah observed the unfolding destruction, she felt no satisfaction. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Let's see if they're ready to talk about peace." The destruction of Nexus Station should have ended the war. Instead, it splintered the Varian Empire into something far more dangerous. Sarah Chen watched the tactical displays aboard the horizon as reports flooded in from across Varian space. Military commanders were declaring themselves warlords, seizing territory and resources. Some were even experimenting with forbidden weapons in desperate attempts to counter Earth's light-based technology. "The Resistance networks are in chaos," Kexley reported, her silvery features drawn with concern. "Many of our cells have been discovered and eliminated. The warlords are becoming increasingly paranoid, seeing saboteurs everywhere." Maya Rodriguez looked up from her station, where she had been analyzing data from their long-range sensors. "It's worse than that. Look at these energy readings from the Centauri border." She brought up a holographic display showing massive power signatures. "They're building something big out there. Multiple somethings. Solar nullifiers," Kexley whispered, her mandibles clicking in distress. "Theoretical weapons designed to create zones of absolute darkness. They were banned even during the Empire's height due to their effects on inhabited systems." James Chen's expression hardened. "They're willing to plunge entire worlds into darkness just to counter our advantage. What about their own colonies?" "The military caste no longer cares about protecting our people," Kexley replied bitterly. "They would rather rule over dead worlds than submit to defeat." Sarah studied the tactical display, noting the patterns of fleet movements and power signatures. "They're not just building defensive weapons," she realized. "This is preparation for a counterattack. They mean to strike Earth directly, but this time with technology specifically designed to neutralize our defenses. The next few weeks became a desperate race against time. While Earth scientists worked to develop countermeasures against the solar nullifiers, Sarah led a series of lightning raids against the warlords' territories. The Horizons Task Force, now augmented with ships crewed by Twilight Resistance members, struck at shipyards and research facilities. But they couldn't be everywhere at once. Reports began arriving of entire systems going dark as the warlords tested their new weapons. Millions of their own people were being sacrificed in these experiments, dying in the endless night or fleeing as refugees to already strained safe zones. During a brief resupply stop at Luna Base, Sarah received an urgent summons from Admiral Zhang. She found him in a secure conference room with several grim-faced members of the Earth Defense Council. "We've intercepted communications between the warlords," Zhang announced without preamble. They'd formed an alliance of convenience. 7 fleet groups are converging on a staging area in the Proxima system. Intelligence suggests they've perfected the nullifier technology. Sarah studied the data carefully. How long? 2 weeks, maybe less. Once they begin their push toward Earth, the nullifiers will create a cascade of darkness that our current weapons can't penetrate. We need a new solution. Maya, who had accompanied Sarah to the meeting, stepped forward. What if we gave them one they already know? All eyes turned to her as she continued. The Varians evolved in twilight, yes, but their ancient records speak of a time when they could endure more light. Their adaptation to darkness was gradual, driven by their military leadership's policies. Kexley, who had been quietly observing, suddenly straightened. The awakening protocols. In our deepest archives, there are records of biological treatments that could help our people readjust to brighter conditions. The military caste suppressed this knowledge, claiming it would make us weak. Could these protocols be modified? Sarah asked. Delivered on a large scale. Maya and Kexley exchanged looks. Theoretically, Maya replied. But we'd need access to the original research and a way to distribute it across multiple star systems simultaneously. The Resistance still has agents in the archive temples, Kexley offered. And the Warlords Alliance works to our advantage. They're gathering their forces in one place. Sarah turned to Admiral Zhang. Give me 3 days with their best scientists. If we can adapt these protocols, we might have a solution that doesn't require more bloodshed. The next 72 hours were a blur of activity. Maya and Kexley led a team working to combine Varian biological science with Earth's delivery systems. Sarah coordinated with resistance cells, positioning assets for what would either be their finest moment or their last stand. As the deadline approached, Sarah stood on the Horizons Bridge, watching the combined warlord fleet gather in Proxima. Over 3,000 ships, including hundreds armed with solar nullifiers. Behind them, massive construction arrays were preparing to begin the cascade that would darken the path to Earth. Awakening payload is ready, Maya reported from the science lab. But Sarah, we've never attempted biological deployment on this scale. If the calculations are off even slightly, then we'll have given them exactly what they expect. A weapon. Sarah finished. But if it works, we give them back something they lost. Choice. She opened a channel to all Earth forces. All ships, prepare for Operation Dayspring. We like the dark. Operation Dayspring began not with a bang, but with a whisper. As the warlords' combined fleet moved into attack formation, their sensors detected no Earth ships in range. Instead, thousands of tiny probes slipped through their defense screens, too small to register as threats. By the time the first vessel's crew noticed the slight shimmer in the air, it was already too late. Dispersal at 90%, Maya reported from her station. The awakening protocols are propagating through their life support systems exactly as planned. Sarah watched the tactical display, holding her breath. The next few moments would determine not just Earth's fate, but the future of 2 civilizations. Kexley, are you ready? The Varian resistance leader nodded, stepping up to the communications array. When she spoke, Her voice carried across every frequency in a message that could not be blocked. Children of the twilight, hear me. For too long we have hidden in darkness, letting fear rule our hearts. Today, we offer you a choice. On screens throughout the Warlord fleet, data began streaming. Ancient records, biological formulas, proof that their species had once thrived in brighter worlds. The awakening protocols weren't a weapon, but a key, unlocking genetic memories that centuries of controlled evolution had suppressed. Your leaders claim that light is our enemy. Kexley continued, that we must destroy it to survive. But they lie. We were not born to darkness. We were confined to it, generation after generation, until we forgot our own strength. The first signs of change rippled through the enemy fleet. Ships began breaking formation as crews experienced the awakening. Some felt fear, others euphoria. But all felt the truth in their very cells. They were more than what their military masters had made them. Launch the final phase, Sarah ordered. The Horizon's forward arrays activated, joined by the rest of the Earth fleet emerging from stealth. But instead of weapons, they projected a carefully calibrated spectrum of light, harsh enough to disable the unprotected military leadership, but gentle enough for those embracing the change to endure. Aboard the Warlord vessels, chaos erupted. Crew members who had accepted the awakening found themselves able to function while their commanders collapsed. The resistance cells hidden throughout the fleet sprang into action, taking control of key systems. Multiple ships reporting successful transitions, James announced. They're standing down their weapons. The nullifier platforms are powering down. Sarah opened a channel to the fleet. This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. We do not seek your destruction or submission. We offer partnership, a chance to step into the light as equals. Choose freely, but choose now. The response came not in words, but in actions. Across the massive fleet, weapons powered down. Ships reoriented themselves, breaking the artificial night their leaders had imposed. A cascade of surrender signals flooded the comm channels. Hours later, Sarah stood in the Horizon's observation deck, watching the sun rise over Earth. Behind her, Maya and Kexley were deep in discussion about the next phase, helping Varian society transition, healing centuries of engineered evolution. It's not the end we expected, James said, joining his sister at the window. When we started this fight, I thought it would end with either their destruction or ours. Sarah smiled. Sometimes the best victories aren't won through superior firepower, but by offering a better path. She turned to face the room full of human and Varian officers working together. They called us a dirt world, but Earth taught us something they'd forgotten. That life thrives in the light. In the months that followed, the galaxy witnessed an unprecedented transformation. The Varian Empire dissolved, replaced by a federation of free worlds. Earth's technology and Varian knowledge merge, creating new possibilities for both species. Research outposts were established on dozens of worlds, studying the ancient records and helping populations adapt to life in the light. 1 year after Operation Dayspring, Sarah stood on a platform in Geneva, watching as the first joint Earth-Varian exploration fleet prepared to launch. Kexley, now serving as the Federation's chief scientist, joined her. The survey teams have found 17 potentially habitable systems beyond the old Empire's borders, the Varian said. Worlds that our people once dismissed as too bright are now calling to us. And what will we find out there? Sarah asked. Kexley's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had learned was amusement, perhaps more dirt worlds. But now we know. That's where the most remarkable things grow. The exploration fleet rose into the dawn, carrying the combined hopes and dreams of two peoples who had moved beyond ancient prejudices. They had learned that true strength lies not in domination, but in the courage to change, to grow, to step out of comfortable darkness and into challenging light. Earth, once mocked as a primitive dirt world, had given the galaxy something far more valuable than advanced weapons or tactical victories. It had shown that even the deepest darkness can be overcome, not through force alone, but through the simple, profound power of offering another way. As the ships vanished into fold space, Sarah thought of how far they'd come from that first hostile encounter. The galaxy was entering a new age, and it had all begun because humanity refused to be dismissed. They had proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the ability to destroy your enemy, but the wisdom to help them transform into something better.